Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Matthew Blaine Podcast. My name is Matthew Blaine. This is episode number 2, and I'm here with Lauren McGrath. Lauren, how are you?
Good. How are you, Matt?
Doing well. Looking forward to chatting here and getting into some interesting topics of marketing and not-for-profit as well as healthcare. I just wanted to very quickly do an introduction here where this podcast is really, I would say it's threefold. One is that learning and development world. So anything having to do with mentoring and coaching, teaching and training, growth, betterment, that kind of number one theme there. Number two is learning about different professions, right? Different careers, different businesses, and hoping to share that with an audience here about different types of work that people do and just learn about that. And then thirdly and finally is the good old-fashioned rabbit holes or tangents or even say thought experiments to see where the conversation leads. Very unscripted. So that's kind of the big three. And as mentioned, this is episode number 2. And these episodes can be found on YouTube as well as on Facebook. On YouTube, it's under the Matthew Blaine channel. It's Mathew, last name Blaine, Blaine. That's the channel there. On Facebook, it'll be done through Reels. And then over time, we'll get it on Apple and Spotify and so forth. So that's quick introduction. And thanks everybody for tuning in. And Lauren, I'm super excited. You and I have done this once before. I think we did a podcast episode maybe 6 years ago, and here we are again. So this is it's funny how life works. I'm really excited about this conversation, and would love to just very quickly get your contact information for anybody who's interested in reaching out with questions or just to learn more from you in the future. Best way for people to reach out, whether it's an email or social media coordinates or whatever you would like to share for people to reach out. And we'll do this again at the end of the episode as well.
Sure. So I would say email is good. I've actually rebranded myself in that my last name's not McGrath anymore. It's Karras, but I know you know me as Lauren McGrath. So the best email address for me is L McGrath Karras. That's Karas at gmail.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn with that full, maiden name, Lauren McGrath Karras. So those are the two best ways to connect with me.
Okay, fantastic. And I kind of just want to tie right into our topic for today, which includes branding and rebranding. And thanks for that update and thanks for sharing that. And I guess we'll get right into it. And again, at the end, we'll go through this contact information again for anybody that's interested in reaching out. So I'd love to talk about marketing and what's the deal with marketing, right? Because I feel like marketing is something that you may not be looking for it, but it's looking for you, right? So it's good to have that awareness of what marketing is all about. So and how advertising fits in and branding and sales and so on. So it's a very kind of broad topic. But there might also be people that are interested in getting into the field, or they have a child that's looking to get into this field in this profession, or they have a small business they're looking to market better. So it's kind of one of those big topics that's kind of out there whether we like it or not, right? So it's good to learn about it and all the ins and outs. So if we were to go into like a Webster's dictionary or Oxford or American Heritage, we'll get all sorts of different definitions of marketing. So what's the Lauren definition of marketing? Kind of the way you would describe what marketing is.
Wow, I haven't thought about that in a while. I guess in my own words, I would define it as a series of concerted efforts to persuade people to purchase a product or service.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, so a series of concerted efforts to persuade people to purchase a product or a service, right? And when I think of marketing, I also sometimes it can be conflated with advertising or sales, and it's like what's kind of the big tent here? Is marketing
I
kind
think
of a subset of advertising or
No,
vice
I think
versa?
it's the other way around. I
Other
think
way around?
advertising is a subset of marketing. Advertising can be a tactic within a marketing plan or a marketing strategy for a company or an organization.
Yep. And what's one of your favorite parts about the marketing profession?
It is one day is never the same.
Mhm.
Every day is different. It's super dynamic.
Mhm. Okay. And when it comes to marketing different products or services, what are examples of things that you have experienced marketing in your professional career?
That I've implemented personally,
Yeah.
or okay, a lot. I mean, my whole career, I would say almost 15 years, I've been what one would call a marketing and communications generalist
Mhm.
because I've always worked in relatively small organizations or organizations with small marketing teams where my role has included the full spectrum of marketing duties.
Mhm.
So that would be anything from content development, so writing things like blog posts, press releases, reports like annual reports in a nonprofit organization, white papers. Social media is a big component of marketing now. You can't really operate without it in 2025.
Mhm.
Advertising,
Mhm.
which can be on social media, it can be on what's called out of home advertising, like billboard ads, ads in bus shelters, ads that you might see on the subway, or even ads on TV.
Mhm.
Marketing is marketing includes things like brand identity as well. So rebranding an organization, coming up with an entirely new logo and color palette and fonts and a website that goes along with it. I guess websites in general are a huge part of marketing. In every job I've ever had, I've been sort of the lead person for website management. Not too technical. I'm not a developer. I can't code a website from scratch, but I know what it takes to I know what it takes to kind of position content properly within a site
Mhm.
and track what people are looking at and to make sure that the topics that are most important to the business or the organization are getting the most attention.
Mhm.
And I would say that's a pretty good summary
Yeah,
of
amazing.
sort of the all the areas. Press, I guess. I did mention press releases, but managing relationships with journalists, with TV producers, with radio hosts, that goes into the big tent of marketing as well.
Sure. Amazing, comprehensive answer. Thank you for that. And in terms of getting into the field initially, so maybe majoring in it and kind of the thought process of your early career, kind of getting into the field and how that journey's been.
So I would say, for those who don't know me,
Mhm.
I'm a millennial. I'm what would even people might even call a peak millennial.
Mhm.
We had the internet in my house beginning around the time I was 9 years old.
Mhm.
And one of my favorite things to do as a kid was to, I guess, although this doesn't necessarily require the internet,
Mhm.
I would make like my own newspapers
Mhm.
on the shared computer in my household with dial up internet
Mhm.
from around the time I was 9 because I really liked writing and like creating visuals that went alongside the stories I was writing. So I would almost make like fake newspapers and then print them and show them to my family. So I think I had an interest in kind of storytelling, which is a huge component of marketing that I didn't even mention previously from the time I was little. And then going into college, going into college was, or once in college, it was a little bit of a tough choice for me because I actually wanted to double major or have some sort of double focus in marketing and visual arts. But at the school I went to, Fordham University in the Bronx, they wouldn't allow me to do a double major that was in two different schools, the art or the liberal arts college and the business school. So I settled for, although I'm still happy with the choice, I was a business major with a marketing concentration. And then I added on an English minor because I wanted to make sure that I had a strong background in reading and writing. And I think that really did me well as I ventured into my career.
Amazing. So even going back to the age of 9 years old, it's kind of when it all got started, when already an inclination towards this type of work.
I think so.
And man, were you one of the originators of, so you were creating basically like fake news at the age of 9? So you like the first, you like one of you like the first fake news outlet?
No, let's be real. Fake news existed long before 1998.
This is great. This is a great point. We could
Yeah.
trace that back maybe later in this episode, or if you want to rejoin a different a later episode. That's an interesting topic, right? Going back to the fake news. But also, let's talk a little bit about that, about the kind of, we'll say, the authenticity, or sometimes even some fakeness of we'll say, marketing, because like any other field, there could be admirable, kind of noble ways of going about it, and then there's sometimes this underbelly in some professions. Kind of, okay, what's
Well,
this isn't as something as to be proud of, right?
the underbelly right now for me, I would say, or that I see, is AI. I
Hmm.
think AI is really tarnishing the marketing profession and just I think people think that AI can be a replacement for having a marketing team, but it can't be. It's a tool, don't get me wrong, but it is it is so overused and it's obvious when people use it and they don't edit it to make it sound like something original. So that is, I think, my biggest concern or my biggest pet peeve in marketing today is this reliance on AI for especially writing.
Okay. Okay. What's a specific example that you've encountered when it comes to maybe an overuse of AI, or which can lead to maybe even a lack of authenticity or originality?
I see it a lot on other brands' social media
Mhm.
posts. So the caption or the copy that accompanies a post, I can tell when it's clearly written by AI.
Mhm.
There's just some buzzwords that AI platforms like to overuse,
Mhm.
and it's just boring, frankly, when everybody's kind of saying things the same way.
Mhm. Okay. Well, it's one of those buzzwords that might.
Unwavering is one I see a lot, and I don't know why that jumps out to me as one right now, but I see unwavering all the time.
Mhm.
And then the use of the M dash, which I've always loved.
Mhm.
So I just feel like one of my favorite, uh, what is the word? Grammatical, or one of my favorite characters in writing has now been co-opted by Chat GPT and
Hmm.
the like.
Hmm. So unwavering, and the second one was, so what is that? It's called the
The M
M
dash,
dash.
that's like the long dash that you would see in
Okay.
writing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and writing is one of those things where, I mean, if you're doing a copy and paste job, or if you're just reshuffling language, it can be picked up on, because it's just a lack of even emotion to it, or a lack of almost like character to it. You can sometimes tell it's coming from a bot, right? Rather than a
Yeah.
person.
It's all over LinkedIn, even people's personal LinkedIn.
Mhm.
I see it every day, and I just wonder why.
Mhm.
Like, what's the point of even posting it when it's so obvious that you didn't write it yourself?
Mhm. Mhm. I'd love to talk a little bit more about AI because it's become I mean super prevalent, right? And it's in every field, and it's in so many different conversations. So with AI, I mean it's kind of been evolving for a few years now, and it will continue to. So it's not like it just popped up overnight, right? That this has been
Mhm.
kind of coming through. So what's your in terms of storytelling? If you were to tell a little bit of a story about AI, what would the story look like so far? And then maybe playing forward another year from now, what the story will look like going forward for with AI.
Well, it's easiest for me to talk from the perspective of writing with AI.
Mhm.
I can touch a little bit on visual creation, but I'll just say for visual creation, and I've tried it, like graphics, the output is something else. It's crazy. Like if you want the output to contain any type of lettering, the lettering almost always looks like Russian characters,
Mhm.
which is not what I'm going for. So that's a little strange. With writing, I would say I I tend to use it as an editor for myself or a proofreader or yeah, copy editor, proofreader. Like I alluded to earlier, I've always worked in small teams or in small organizations. I don't have the staff bandwidth to ask someone to proofread what I wrote. That's just the reality. So I rely on a free tool to do that for me.
Mhm.
So that's that's my relationship with it.
Mhm.
It can't replace the writing process. And I think I've also used it at times for brainstorming ideas. So just sort of like a little buddy, a little buddy assistant
Mhm.
that is on my computer. And I think because I've been using it now for 2 years, it knows my style. It knows what I like. I guess I've fed it a lot of information. I'm pleased with the results I'm seeing.
Mhm. What would you say?
But, oh, I was just going to say, but it always requires my review. Like, you can't just put something in and like you said, copy and paste. Like, it's never really going to sound professional.
What would you say to somebody who's concerned? Let's say they're in the writing field or they're an aspiring writer or author, and they're concerned about the future for their own job stability, their own career prospects. So, what would you say to somebody who's kind of specific within writing that is concerned about either being replaced by AI or being gradually phased out by AI? What would you say to that person?
I would tell them to keep writing and to be writing without the use of AI at all, to write regularly. And that's something I wish I did more, is just wrote for the sake of writing. That's what I would tell them to do. But I wouldn't sugarcoat it because I think that they do have right to be concerned. But I don't know. Like I interact with a lot of journalists, like I alluded to earlier, and I don't know that AI could ever produce the the produce content at the level at which I see produced by journalists I know. I just don't think it's capable. There's so much human judgment that goes into, say, writing an article about health policy and making it sound emotional and not just, a series of facts. So, yeah, I would say keep writing.
Love it. With writing, kind of how we fit that within the big tent of marketing. So writing, so what I heard earlier was like maybe writing press releases. And is that something that falls within the big tent of marketing,
Yeah.
writing a press release for or an organization? Yeah. And so what would
Yeah.
something like that look like?
For me personally, and I guess for our listeners who wouldn't know this, I work for a nonprofit healthcare organization that's based here in New Jersey where I live. And often I leverage events to as a way to attract attention from the press. So if we're having some sort of large scale event and maybe we have a featured speaker who is a state senator or an assembly person, that can be attractive to somebody in the press because that's like a reason for them to show up. So a press release is or it's a reason for them if that I guess a media alert is what I would use to get them there. A press release is what I would use to get them to run a story after the event has occurred or after the news is out. Maybe it's again for my job specifically, that might mean that we just open a new building or that we just unveiled some kind of new resource. Most recently, it was a new mobile medical facility. So almost like a 40-foot bus that has two medical exams in it that can go to wherever. It can go to homeless shelters. It can go to farms. It can go to public housing, go to schools, just places where people either like live or congregate or work so that they could, see a large number of people with medical appointments in a short period of time. And things like that, there's an audience. There's an audience in the dwindling New Jersey press world for stories like those that have to do either with healthcare or human interest or that, where we say New Jersey State Senator Anthony Bucco, he's the Senate Minority Leader in New Jersey, attended. They'll run things like that. And these media alerts and these press releases have to be written in such a way that you're straight to the point. There's no fluff because they just want to know what happened. So these are not creative pieces. There is a formula to writing these. And I feel like I have mastered that over the past couple of years.
Okay. So for somebody who might be interested in entering this profession in this field, or maybe when one of their children is interested in it, or maybe they have a small business and they're looking to kind of fine tune their skills or develop their skills to help their business where they don't have a big organization, so they kind of are the marketing department, right? So,
Yeah.
so writing is one of those skills that is necessary. What's another skill that would be necessary for somebody to develop within this field to be excellent at it?
Ooh, maybe just uh, sorry, getting a phone call. Not important. Maybe just general social media savviness, understanding which social media platforms are relevant for their audience. So, what might be good for, LinkedIn might be great for one person, but TikTok might be non-negotiable for someone else, which is not a platform. TikTok is not something I've really spent much time on. I have a side story about TikTok, but it's kind of boring. Yeah, so having an understanding of really where your audience is on the internet is important. And I don't know that that's really so much a skill as it is like a competency, like just something you know as a result of knowing who your audience is, who are you selling to? Okay, what are their interests? How old are they? Where do they live? How much money do they make? What's their education like? What are their beliefs? What's important to them? What kind of jobs do they do? All these sort of demographic features might come into play when you're trying to determine where you'll best encounter your audience online.
Okay. I think one person's boring might be another person's exciting. So I do want to hear this TikTok, little TikTok story you got. So tell me, let's go off on that. Well, let's go off to the side with that a little bit. What's that TikTok story?
I got banned from TikTok at work
Ooh.
because I was running advertisements that were relevant to vaccinations because we're a healthcare organization and the CDC gave us funding. And TikTok, I guess, knows that vaccines are like a controversial topic.
Mhm.
And they sent me basically like gibberish in broken English saying that they knew that I was a bad actor and that they were revoking access to my advertising account on TikTok immediately. And there was basically no way that I could appeal that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so TikTok isn't my friend, really. I also just think I'm too old for TikTok. I don't know. I shouldn't say that. That's actually something listeners, if you want to if you want to work in marketing, you can't say I'm too old for that because part of what you need to do is stay current and flexible
Okay. Okay.
with new platforms. And maybe TikTok, hopefully TikTok doesn't make sense for what you're doing.
Mhm. So TikTok is one of a number of social media platforms, right? And when you're looking at your audience in this case, so it's healthcare company, right? So you say, where do I where are these where do I find people that would be interested in this? So TikTok was a potential of like, all right, people on TikTok might want to find us there. What are the other social media platforms that you would look to
Well,
utilize?
Well, for me, I have two audiences really because we're a nonprofit organization, so we're always considering that there are our philanthropic supporters on one side, and the other side there are of course our patients. There are other smaller audiences that we have to be concerned with, but those are the two biggest. For patients, it's like regular Google search.
Mhm.
It's Facebook and it's Instagram. For the philanthropic audience, it can be more LinkedIn, but it can be Facebook and Instagram as well. Oh, and YouTube. Because we will from time to time produce videos that illustrate the impact of the organization, say interviews with patients. That's a YouTube thing that typically runs on YouTube. Other channels. We're not really on X these days. If we had a larger team, maybe we would be, or on some of the newer ones. But that's where I am right now
Mhm.
on usage.
Okay. And I can't help but come back a little bit to the TikTok because you did that was piqued my curiosity. So you were banned from TikTok and
TikTok advertising.
advertising, and has that ban been lifted since?
I haven't like really looked into it because I don't need to use TikTok advertising.
Okay.
Yeah, I do advertising to patients, but I primarily will use, like I said, Google ads or Facebook and Instagram.
Okay. So let's say I'm a small business owner that's just getting started out, or I'm somebody that has a business idea and an entrepreneurial streak and is considering starting a business, but it can be daunting. Um, what can you say to somebody like that, or in this hypothetical, about Facebook and Instagram and X and TikTok and YouTube and so on when it comes to resourcefulness, meaning how much would they have to pay to get onto these platforms? Can they kind of bootstrap that? Can they do it with no charge? Like for somebody who's kind of just getting started and doesn't have a huge budget to play with, what would you advise that person when it comes to getting onto social media?
Well, first I would say, and maybe this wouldn't be obvious to everyone, don't do any of that until you have a website. There's no being in business at all today without a website. Like
Mhm.
that's sort of your home base for your online presence. And if you have social media, the social media should always be driving people to your website.
Mhm.
Social having a website, if you want to talk costs, I think all in would probably, for a bare bones site, maybe run you a couple $100s a year. I used to have a personal Squarespace website where I had like my resume and like my professional information that I let lapse. And I want to say with the hosting and all, with all the fees, it was maybe $200 a year. So that's not a lot. Maybe 300 with inflation. It might run you today. For social media, it's free to be on any platform, but it is not free to advertise. If you want your content to be seen by people who are not following you, which chances are people aren't following you if you're new or you're just starting out, then you're going to have to invest in some kind of ads.
Mhm.
And it's impossible for me to really project what somebody would spend on that without knowing like how broad or how narrow their audience is.
Mhm.
The you know that would be all those questions I had shared earlier, like who who does like what is your audience, where does your audience live, what, like how much money do they make, what do they like, what are their hobbies, wow, how much education do they have. Those are the types of things you would have to take into consideration with running an advertising campaign.
Okay. So this tent of marketing. We talked a little bit about writing, talked about social media savvy. Now we're talking about advertising. And so when we're talking more about advertising, um, I feel like maybe sometimes a thought could be, oh, I don't buy things that are advertised to me, right? I don't pay attention to commercials, or I never actually act on advertisements. What would you say in rebuttal to that statement?
You probably do and you don't know it. Like, but it also depends like how active are you on these channels. Like how much of an internet user are you? It seems as though everything that I need in some way ends up getting advertised to me. For example, I'm pregnant, and I would say I'm like 5.5 months pregnant. Probably 4.5 months ago, I started getting ads for like a baby supply superstore in Paramus, New Jersey. And I still get them. And you know what? I went to that store the other day and I bought a car seat for the baby. So I don't, I don't know if people really realize it, but I think that their purchasing decisions are in some ways being influenced. I mean, it could be something as simple as like an event, uh, like an event on Facebook, like advertising a concert. But there might be people who feel as though they've never been influenced, and I'm sure those people exist.
And that's what I was alluding to at the beginning of the episode was this idea that if one is not interested in marketing, and but marketing is interested in in that person, right? So it's all around us. Even if we're driving on the highway and there's a truck to the side, and that truck has a brand on it, right?
Yeah,
So
probably
that's
says we're hiring, or it has the logo of the company.
the logo, yeah.
Yeah, and a tag, a slogan, and maybe their website. It might even have a QR code on it
Mhm.
so that if somebody, well, you don't want to scan and drive, but if it's parked, you could scan it and find out more about the company.
Welcome to 2025. It used to be you don't want to drink and drive, and now it's you don't want to
Now
scan and
scan and
drive.
drive.
And and you don't want to drink and drive either.
No, that's
But
still discouraged.
still is discouraged as well as scanning and driving. So that truck goes past and it's got the logo, and maybe it has now hiring or so there we go. So let's, there's an advertisement essentially. If it could be a job advertisement that they're hiring, right? So there it is. It's not on the internet, but it's existing in the physical world, the non-digital world. And how does this tie into branding? So like that quick hit where there's a logo or there's this movie in the mind that happens when you see that logo or so to talk a little bit more about branding because that's
Yeah,
it is
yeah,
how that weaves into what we're discussing today.
yeah. So I guess seeing the logo and if there's any sort of like tagline that goes underneath it,
Mhm.
that helps me understand what the business is, that creates some kind of impression for me. That gives me information that lets me know what this business does and what they're known for and what they're good at.
Mhm.
So, and hopefully it's memorable.
Mhm.
And hopefully, if you're that business, I'm going to see, I'm going to hear about that business in other ways.
Mhm.
I guess that's the other point I didn't make yet is that marketing is most effective when it's not just reaching people in one place. It takes multiple touch points to really influence somebody to make a purchase decision. And it's most effective when it's not just through a single channel. So that might be the truck thing
Mhm.
could be a stretch, especially like in my case. Was I going to see a truck advertising the store, the baby supply store? No, but maybe I saw, maybe I got a mailer. I got something in the mail, or maybe I went on Google and searched best car seats, and top of the list was this store.
Mhm.
Or maybe I saw it not just on Instagram, but I also saw it on Facebook, and I also saw it on X.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Okay.
There needs to be. It also it kind of just needs to be. This sounds kind of evil, and maybe it is, depending on what you're marketing to people. But it kind of just needs to like surround someone, and you need to. You want to be in front of people in as many different places as possible.
Okay. What is an example of, let's say, a logo or something similar that you've seen in the past few months where, with your trained marketing eye and background, you're like, oh wow, that's very well done. Like kind of right away, that's very creative, or where it made an impression on you just as a experienced marketer, where you saw something and were, we'll say, wowed by it.
I gotta think about that. I'm kind of just now I'm looking around my office for something. Unfortunately, most of what I see is the logo of the organization that I work for.
Even if it's not a logo, something that was like marketing related, maybe a tagline even, or something, some even an advertisement. We're like, oh, shoot, that look at that, that was very well done. There was a excellent marketer behind that.
You might have to come back to that question for me. I gotta let that one sit.
Mhm. Okay. And what we'll
Yeah.
do too is with the we're gonna starting out with Facebook for this podcast and for YouTube, there's the comment section there. So if you we could do little show notes after the and we could comment there with an update to that Q&A. And
Sure.
I have some of that on my to-do list from episode number one to log in. And so everybody feel free to use the comment section to keep this conversation going.
Yes.
So with market, so the term remarketing, right? And when I hear remarketing, I think of something like that baby store
Ad.
example. Yeah, where like once there's interaction by an internet user, then on the somewhere
It
somewhere in
kind of
cyberspace,
follows.
it's being recorded or stored as data that Lauren clicked on this one thing. And
Yep.
then surprise, surprise, the next day it's coming at you, it's beginning to surround you. So is that the right term for it? Is it called remarketing
Or
and maybe
retargeting.
retargeting? And
Yeah.
tell us a bit about that because I think we've all experienced that where all of a sudden the perfect product is surrounding us and we're like, whoa, what a coincidence. Um,
Yeah.
so is our phone listening to us? Yeah, it is.
I
That's
don't
good.
think I don't think anything's listening to us, but I think that all of our behavior on the internet is tracked. That's why when we go to websites, they ask us if we want to opt in to cookies or not. But regarding this whole retargeting, that's not something that I personally have a ton of hands-on experience doing.
Mhm.
It's more so the type of thing that I've hired outside consultants to do for me.
Mhm.
Having worked primarily on small teams or in small organizations, most of which have been nonprofits, I've never had a massive advertising budget to play with either. So I know that retargeting is a good practice, but it's just not something that I personally have a ton of experience with.
Okay. So I'm thinking about this tent again, this tent
Yes.
of marketing, and we got the writing, we have the social media savvy, we have advertising, we have branding, um,
It's email too. I didn't even
email.
think about email.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Email is huge. That's going to be, and that's a great example of a low cost way that a new or emerging business owner, or a low cost tool that a new or emerging business owner can utilize.
Mhm.
A plan on Constant Contact or on MailChimp or one of those, depending on your list size, should be relatively inexpensive. Just thinking right now in my organization, we use two different email services. We use one for the patient audience and one for the donor audience. The patient audience, we probably have more than 40,000, maybe almost 50,000 email addresses in our list, and we pay about $600 a month. So if you're someone who's just starting out, you are probably working with a very small list in comparison. So you might be looking at something like, I don't know, $50 a month, maybe 30, even less, 25. There might even be free plans on some of these platforms if you're not at, say, a minimum contact number. I haven't used MailChimp in a while, but it could be that if you have, say, fewer than 2,000 contacts, it's free.
Mhm.
And that is an excellent way to keep in touch with people for very little money.
Mhm.
To start collecting email addresses, you could do that through your website or through face-to-face interactions, and then periodically send out news and updates to them.
Okay. And earlier I heard something along the lines of even regular mail, right? Flyers, snail mail. So what do
Yeah,
you say to somebody who says, "Oh, that'll never work. This is 2025. It's all digital. I'm not going to bother sending out mailers."
depends on what your product is, I think.
Okay.
Is it, like something that's really, somebody who has a really niche service probably isn't going to use a mailing direct mail list. But if you're like a restaurant and you just opened up in town, maybe it's sending a mailer to everybody who lives in that town and maybe the next town over and then some, because it's something that has mass appeal.
And same with press. I think I heard you say earlier, there's like a niche sometimes, for instance, in say politics, right? Or state senator, I think you mentioned, or state assemblyman, or and a press release that's kind of tied into that and the healthcare sector. So I think you said it might surprise some people that there's still a market for X, right? People are still reading. When I say X, I mean an entity, right?
Right.
So so tell us a little bit about that. About might surprise. Oh, shoot, there is a market for that. People are still reading a newspaper, or people are still reading press releases for a certain segment of a market that might be surprising.
Well, newspapers, I think, have really dwindled in readership, but there are a lot of online news sites that people still read and that are, usually specific to geography. So, say maybe a certain county
Mhm.
or a region or even just one town. So, what's important for press relations is having a really robust list of contacts that you build through internet research and through relationships, so that you know exactly who is writing for which outlet and what their interests are and what maybe geography they cover and what they don't cover. And maybe knowing them well enough that you know what the best way to get them to run something is. What works for one journalist, but like what works best for one person might be a phone call. For somebody else, maybe it's email. For somebody else, maybe it's a DM on a social media platform. You just have to know what people's preferences are and then kind of flex to them.
Okay. Maybe we'll pivot for a couple moments of your personal journey, right? This I feel like thus far, I mean, this so much. Thank you so much. This is chock full of substance. There's so much interesting, useful information you've shared. So thank you for that. And
Sure.
with so your personal career journey a bit, I'm curious for women listeners and women females in our audience. Uh, Part about you shared about going from a maiden name to a married name, and career wise, what that was like, and personally how to go through that, because then that's interesting for men to understand too. But that's usually a unique journey for a woman to change her name career wise and legally and so on. So I would love to learn more about that. I don't have any experience doing that myself.
Yeah. That was kind of a scary decision to make. In fact, I put it off. I got married a little more than 2 years ago, but I only changed my name legally about a year ago. And because I'm so fearful of people not knowing who I am, I tend to keep my maiden name visible everywhere. That's why you see it on the screen right now. That's why it's in my primary email address. That's why it's on my LinkedIn. It's in my email signature at work still. Because sometimes I have people who will write me back and they'll be like, oh, I didn't know this was you. Like, I didn't recognize the name. And that's my biggest fear is being perceived as irrelevant or unknown. So it's it's tough. Also, I guess because I got married, what, 12, 13 years into my career. Like, I already had so much, I had built so much under the name Lauren McGrath. I almost felt like it was, I didn't want it to feel like I was starting over, but in some ways, sometimes it does feel like that. So I guess the only advice I could give to somebody is to retain usage of your maiden name if you want people to know who you are. And to, I mean, this is advice for everyone. Just keep up with the relationships that you have. Don't let don't let years go by without talking to the people in your professional circle who are important to you. And hopefully, eventually, it'll become a non-issue for you.
And pregnancy, also part of a personal and professional journey, right? So,
Yeah.
what about naming? Also, what about the concept of baby names, right? Going through that process and the branding around that, right? Because a name, there's a chapter in Freakonomics, which I would recommend that book. I think it's a fantastic book, Freakonomics. There's a chapter about that and kind of fascinating about how a name can sometimes, a baby name can sometimes chart a chart a bit of the future for that new human and what the name means and how it's perceived and what it says about the generation and so on. So what is that? What's going through your mind when it comes to baby names and what that, for lack of, I mean, and the branding around that, right? Or what that says, how that will play into your child's future.
Well, not gonna reveal what the chosen name is, but and I hope you can understand that.
Of course.
But of course, we want the name. Who wouldn't want the name to sound nice, like pleasant on the ears and pleasant on the eyes,
Mhm.
and to not conjure up any like negative connotations, like meaning like a name that could be distorted into a curse word or initials that could spell out something offensive. I think, I guess that's like really my only perceived concern that somebody could have is that the name could either be made fun of or distorted into like a bad word. Although I guess the other thing is that the name could have reference to someone famous
Mhm.
who maybe is really disliked. I guess that's another concern. So if there's a first name out there that is just associated with hatred or evil,
Mhm.
well, I don't think you'd want to give your kid that name either.
Right.
But other than that, I think have fun with it because
Mhm.
it's it's personal to you.
Mhm. Sure. Can't help but think of the Seinfeld episode with Joel Rifkin. I mean that's when the bad luck comes in when the life could be going along swimmingly and then all of a sudden you have the same name as a serial killer. That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Parents can't really plan out for that, right? And then
No.
that's got to be a tough one. But then goes the process of maybe considering a name
A name
change.
change.
But, nobody wants to be named Jeffrey Dahmer, right? That's
Nope.
um, so, so what else in terms of your personal career journey would you like to share and also like how that's played into your decision making, whether it comes to job moves or career planning? Because again, we have listeners, pretty diverse listeners based on the first podcast episode. So we have different all sorts of folks tuning in. So what what can you share about how like the personal your unique experience career-wise has been woven into professionally and how you made decisions, career decisions, and will continue to make career decisions?
Well, I guess I'll just say that I'm an industry changer, and I don't think these days people are staying in the same industry for their whole career. But I went about it in a really methodical way. I started out my career actually working with Matt.
Mhm.
I worked in an executive search firm. And even though I thought business to business marketing was interesting, I think I wanted a stronger connection to the people who are being helped by the organization or business that I was working for.
Mhm.
I never felt like I had that when I was in recruitment because I was head of marketing and communications there. So I didn't have really relationships with the clients or the candidates. I felt removed from that. And when I was about halfway through my time at that job, I discovered a volunteer nonprofit opportunity in my own neighborhood, working with children, I guess, of all school age children. And I felt not only was I able to make a connection with the children as a volunteer, but I was able to maintain that as I stepped into a director of marketing role with that organization because there was no way to be effective in that role without understanding the perspectives of the kids who were being helped by the program and telling their stories and telling their parents' stories and telling the volunteers' stories. And I've sort of carried that through that my whole career to where I am now. There's no marketing of a nonprofit organization without being able to articulate the impact that it's made on people's lives. So that then requires relationships with people and being able to sit down with them and have a conversation, ideally face to face, and get to know what it is that maybe changed or, in my case now, even saved their lives because I'm in healthcare now. And in many cases, people will cite that they've received life-saving help. So I guess where I was going with that is that if you work in marketing and you want to change industries, you can, but have a plan. I worked part-time with that first nonprofit alongside my full-time job. And then I used that experience to get a full-time nonprofit role and then to get another one, that the one that I have now. But I think that goes, I think having a plan is fundamental for any career, no matter what you do.
Okay, I'd love to hear a little bit more about the connection to the respective product or service. So in this case, maybe not feeling as connected in the executive recruitment firm to the end user, right? Whether it's a candidate or a client, and then maybe in healthcare, or feeling that connection or the meaningful, or being closer to it, shall we say, or feeling more connected. So what's that like in healthcare and not for profit for you as when it comes to the meaning of the work and really the connection to the end user, more intimate connection. Tell us a little bit more about that.
It's gratifying, even though I'm not the person in the exam room. I'm not the person diagnosing somebody or referring them to open heart surgery at the 11th hour and saving their life. But it's gratifying to see any person have some kind of a success, I think, or I don't know how anybody could hear a conversation with a person who maybe whose life was in crisis, and then they did a complete 180 and now they say have their diabetes under control and they're no longer homeless and they have health insurance again. Like it's hard to not feel something when you listen to a story like that. So Matt, what was the what was the question?
You answered it spot on, which is the kind of that meaningful connection to the product or service.
It's easier,
I don't know
yeah.
if you're in this case healthcare or not profit.
Yeah, it's easier to I guess write and share externally about the organization when you intimately know the people that it has helped. And I guess now that when I think back, how many years ago? 8 years, oh, going on 9 years since I've been in executive search.
Mhm.
I guess I never even asked if I could have sit down conversations with the candidates. That
Mhm.
would have been interesting. But I think in many cases, and you worked in recruitment too, was that like a confidentiality thing, or maybe candidates didn't necessarily want it known?
Mhm.
I mean, because candidates leave their jobs for all sorts of reasons and seek new employment. So if somebody's miserable, they don't necessarily want that told to the public, right? Like, oh, I was miserable in this job because the hours were awful. It was public accounting and I was burning out and I was I was so stressed out. I was having stomach issues and you know, I was not getting paid what I deserved and it was just wreaking havoc on my life.
Mhm.
I mean, that maybe that was the type of stuff that maybe that's the type of stuff that recruiters hear, like
Mhm.
about how jobs are making people unhappy and then they're going off and they're finding a new role that they're happy in.
Mhm.
I don't I don't know that if that storytelling opportunity would have existed because I don't know that it would have served that person well. Sort of that arriving in crisis.
Mhm.
Not that I don't know. You tell me. I'm so removed from the industry now, but do you feel like people can arrive or can people can connect with a recruiter feeling as though they are in crisis because their job is so wrong for them?
Sure. So I think there's a certain, we'll say, recruiter candidate confidentiality, almost similar how there's doctor-patient confidentiality. If the recruiter is going about their business in a professional fashion and somebody's sharing the reason for them looking for a new job, or maybe doing a little bit of venting or sharing about their current situation, yeah, in a perfect world, and most times recruiters will keep that confidential. And but there is a certain intimacy there between somebody's labor, their physical and mental efforts, and their compensation or their appreciation, and also not being found out that they're looking for a new job by their current. That can be a source of stress for candidates, being for their boss to find out they're looking for a new job and then lose their current job, even if they are not
Yeah.
necessarily fulfilled. So yeah, there's definitely, if done the right way, in my opinion, there should be some recruiter candidate confidentiality, and there's intimacy there. So it's not necessarily a regular occurrence for somebody to sit in on those meetings and get be more connected to that experience. But I will say, in recruitment too, there is a lot of meaningful work, because sometimes it could get it could be difficult, and there's twists and turns to the interview process and the hiring process, but helping somebody get into a better situation with their career, basically their job, their fulfillment, their compensation, it is pretty rewarding. But a lot goes a lot goes into it. Sometimes it's that sausage making process, right? It could sometimes be tough, and there'll be some bumps, but I think the work that you did in executive search that I witnessed, it's very meaningful work, and people got great jobs, but it just wasn't, you weren't directly working with the candidate day in and day out, so it's tough to really feel connected to it.
It
But there are a lot of
was.
people that benefited from your work, in my opinion.
Sure. Yeah, and just to clarify, I would never have suggested sitting in
Mhm.
on a candidate recruiter conversation.
Mhm.
I meant more so that I would have told
Mhm.
the success story of the person finding the new job after the fact.
Okay.
But
Mhm.
even then I can understand how some of those details are pretty personal.
Mhm.
And sort of the same thing, not surprisingly, comes into play in my job. I mean, everybody knows what HIPAA is.
Mhm.
And if they don't, well, that's the Healthcare Information Privacy and Portability
Mhm.
Act. I really need to know what that means to call myself a credible professional.
We're going to put that in the show notes as well, and in the
Yep.
comment section of Facebook and YouTube.
HIPAA. Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, but basically, in order for me to externally communicate any of these stories, I need written consent
Mhm.
from the patient that it's okay for me to do that and that I can reveal
Mhm.
their personal health details and incorporate them into stories that are going to be used on the internet, in videos, in articles, in
Mhm.
newsletters. So, kind of a similar concept.
Yeah.
Yeah, even though, like in the recruitment situation, I'm not the one, I'm not the doctor. And I'm just like I'm not the recruiter, I'm just the person extracting what I think are the most appealing components and then formatting them into something for public consumption.
Mhm.
That kind of sounds evil.
It could be used for good or evil.
Yeah.
Those powers can be used for good or evil, but definitely can be influential, right? On
Yes.
people's decisions. And and just circling back to that scenario of a recruiter meeting with a candidate, always case by case where certain candidates were super cautious and want like
Yeah.
ultra confidentiality, would never want somebody sitting in on a meeting. And other people are like, oh yeah, have somebody sit in. It's all good. I'm an open book. So it could have, some people would be more than happy to have you in the meeting. But I totally get how a marketer would feel like that connection can help you do your job even better because of in coaching we talk about like tapping into the why, right? Once you feel the why of something, all of a sudden that writing gets 10% stronger, right? And there's that why can really help yield a wonderful end result to the work. Being able to write with that in mind, right? Or come up with a logo with that real connection to the product or service.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we're gonna go a couple minutes here. We're gonna wrap up shortly, but a couple of minutes of some I'll call them thought experiments, right? Or a couple quick questions for you. So, how about if you could travel in time, right? So if there was time travel, right? Would you choose the future or the past to travel to? If you can only choose one of the two, and why?
I would choose the past, and I probably would have studied something else. If I could do a full disclosure, I think if I could redo my life, I would have chosen a different career. Not that I don't like what I do. I mean, like I explained, my love for this kind of work dates back almost 30 years
Mhm.
at this point. But I think that if I could do things over, just the way that things are going, like with the job market and the economy right now, I think I would have done something a little more certain and secure, something that's always in demand.
Mhm.
With marketing, it can be really challenging to sell yourself in an very, very oversaturated job market. I
Mhm.
mean, I know I know kids right now who, have bachelor's degrees in marketing and they can't find jobs in their field. But I also know of kids, and when I say kids, I mean 22-year-olds
Mhm.
who have accounting degrees and they can't find jobs. Or I've heard stories on the news about kids who have engineering degrees and they can't find jobs. So I think I might have chosen something that was a little more, what's the word? Guaranteed, I guess. And
Mhm.
I think I would have if I could do everything all over again, I would have gone into, I think, nursing or something in healthcare,
Mhm.
something that's foolproof,
Mhm.
always in demand.
Mhm. Okay. Really interesting answer. Historical figure. So if you could have dinner with one historical figure, who would that person be and why?
Ooh, trying to think which, there's so many different ways to go with this.
Mhm.
I think I'd like to have dinner with, let's see, probably a US president who's no longer living. Um, maybe, I don't mean, I'm not trying to give away any political or imply any political affiliation. Um, maybe I would like to have dinner with, I don't want to throw this one in the show notes. I want to give an answer here. This is such a trick question because there are so many people. Ooh, you know what? No, maybe I would want to have dinner with a personal relative of my own
Mhm.
who's like a great grandmother who I never met
Mhm.
to get their perspective on the world today as a person who's a blood relative.
Mhm.
That's my answer.
Very cool answer. And one final question, spirit animal. What's your spirit animal?
So my gut answer is to say a cat because I love cats are I guess my favorite animal. I have two of them. But cats are they sleep all the time and they don't do anything. So that's not who I want to be associated with because I think I have a lot of drive and ambition and cats are really lazy. At least house cats like I have. So if I'm not going to go with a cat, then I'm going to go with a horse. Yeah, horse are, you know, horses are fast and they are associated, at least like when I think of horses, I think of racing and competition and drive.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'll go with a horse.
There we go. So I wanted to say thank you. I've learned a lot today, and it was fun. And I believe that listeners and will also benefit from this. This was just chock full of useful information, and appreciate your time. Appreciate you sharing your personal career journey as well, and really great when it came to like defining these things, like the definition of marketing. I feel like right out of the gate, that was something that is we should put right up there with the Webster's Dictionary and American Heritage and so on. That was a really, I think, a very useful and pragmatic definition of marketing. Good summary there. So I want to get that contact information again out there for the best way for people to get in touch with you, whether it's social media or an email address to to connect with you. And what are those coordinates?
Sure. So LinkedIn, I'm Lauren McGrath Karras. That's McGrath.
Mhm.
And Karras is Karas. There's probably no one else with that same full name on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
And then so that's a benefit, I guess, of having going back to the rebranding with the, changing my last name.
Mhm.
There are so many Lauren McGraths in the world. I'm
Mhm.
not even kidding. Like, there's at least one person who also graduated from Fordham University within a 5 year, maybe 5 years prior to me.
Mhm.
So now I'm different, and that's being different's important in marketing and personal branding. Anyway, my contact info, Lauren McGrath
Mhm.
Karras on LinkedIn, and then email address lmcgrathkarras@gmail.com.
Okay. Amazing. Thank you so much for being a guest, and
Sure.
we'll definitely be interested in having you back in the future
Absolutely.
as we proceed with additional episodes. And you have a great day, have a great rest of your weekend, and
Thanks.
good luck with everything.
Thanks, Matt.
You're very welcome.